Good evening, everyone. Welcome
Hey, y'all.
to the Huddle.
Happy welcome.
Happy Wednesday. We're glad you're here.
Welcome to the Huddle.
Y'all see how they do me every week. So
We love you, Pastor Brooke.
Oh, yeah.
We do.
Okay.
Especially when you say, welcome to Wednesday. Happy Huddle.
We're glad you guys are here. It is the week of
What is it?
Easter. Easter is this Sunday.
Man.
We made it.
Yeah,
It's exciting.
super excited.
And
Are we
we're
sure?
excited. We're sure.
That's
Positive.
terrifying.
Totally positive. And we're excited, too, to tell you
I
guys.
know you're sure.
And
I'm
remind
asking
you
if our
guys
fact checkers are sure.
that we're going to have a special Good Friday huddle that you're not going to want to miss.
You don't want to miss that.
It's going
Right.
to be really good. Just to circle up to talk about the day and the weekend and what it means and the weightiness of it all. And
Yeah.
it's going to be a great discussion. So make sure you guys set your alarms, get ready for to settle into Sabbath Friday night.
Right.
And
It's a very
circle
special
up with your family.
version of
Good,
that.
You know, your kids aren't at school Good Friday. So just make it like your precursor to your movie night or whatever you're going to do. Circle up
Yeah.
and
I tell you
Join
what, the rhythm of Sabbath, I think, has started to kind of really set in
Yes.
yeah,
with the whole entire congregation.
Yes.
right. I agree.
I think it's special.
It's your metronome.
There you go.
Yeah.
And when you really hop into that rhythm, it just lets everything fall into place
Yeah.
differently than what
Truly.
it normally would be. Just want to encourage everybody who is tapped into the huddle. If you haven't subscribed to the Sabbath readings,
Yes.
please make sure you're doing that.
It says
Every single
just
week
text
is
the
going
number. It's right here on the
set
screen.
you up for the week with what we're reading together. If you're not involved with the Sabbath prayer team watch,
Yeah.
you can pray.
That's right. And there's
Find-
still
yeah,
you can go
find
sign
an
up.
hour to pray.
Yeah.
I think it's our duty and our job to help birth these services,
That's right.
especially when it comes to Easter, Resurrection Sunday coming up.
Yeah,
2,000
yourself-
years later, the least we could do is watch with him.
Yeah,
that's right.
100%. And I think that will really ignite the fire that needs to be lit for you to talk to somebody about Jesus this week.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Find somebody that you can share the gospel with. Let your light shine.
I'm going to say something borderline harsh about that, but only because I have to say it to myself this way sometimes. But if you can't invite people to church on Easter, because it just doesn't, it really doesn't even take overcoming a cultural barrier. Basically, a lot of Americans are predisposed to be interested in a service on Easter, especially if there's something for their kids to do.
Right.
It's kind of they're gonna wind up. A lot of them are gonna wind up at one,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
pray wherever they wind up that they encounter the resurrection.
That's right.
I believe because of the prayer, the fasting, the consecration that's gone into this one, if they come to ours, they will encounter that.
That's right.
So that ultimately should give me more than enough confidence to tell my waiter, tell the barista at the drive-through, I should be handing out those papers left and right.
Yeah.
Did we put a spot on them for?
We did. I'm the guest of, so when guest brings their card in, they can say, "Can you help me find this
Yeah.
person?"
And I
They
would
invited
encourage you to
me.
write your name on it in front of them
Yeah.
to make them feel.
It's an
Right.
invitation.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I'm asking you to be my honored special guest. I
That's
want you
right.
just to
That's
be welcomed.
Throw an extra 5 or 10% on that tip.
Yeah. For sure.
Really,
Those are
if you can.
little things that we can kind of do to just set us apart.
Yeah.
You know what just comes to mind just real quick? When
Burn
Jesus
up that clock, bro.
intentionally took his disciples through Samaria, right? And they're stopping at the well. And if you know that the cultural history with that, like the Jewish people did not
go that way.
They would go around, even though that was the fastest way to go the route that they normally would go. And so the disciples, like, they're into town getting supplies, and Jesus, the Bible says, he was tired and worn out from his journey. And he stops and he notices the woman at the well. And that is just a masterclass in evangelism. If you would take that story and you see how he initiated the conversation, how he broke down any type of defense mechanisms that she had. He didn't come right out and identify her sin. Right. But he did address it when it was time. And at the end of the day, she went out and spread the news about what he shared with her. And this was a little detail in the Bible that I just now noticed and read. He stayed an additional 2 days in the town based upon that interaction. They were supposed just to pass through. But her interaction with him, she was so excited about sharing the gospel with everybody else. They were like, we got to find this man who you're saying is a prophet. And the word of God says he stayed an additional 2 days. Wow. So what can we do if we don't just tell people about Jesus for Resurrection Sunday? What can we do to have them stay 2 days? Right. Like, make that fit to whatever type of pattern or category you want to. But what can we do that something that's going to last? That I want to stay and I want to hear more about what you were talking about.
That's good. That's so good.
That reminds me of the image of Zacchaeus, climbing the tree, because I'm gonna see him, and I think the biggest element of that jumps out at me is the courage it took to draw attention to himself in that crowd. Because that was going to be a hyperbolically patriotic crowd. Their religious fervor, their national fervor was going to be through the roof anytime. This is why the Romans were so uneasy around Messiah figures, and that's something a lot of people don't realize, is there were many of them. Ours happens to be the one. But Messiah figures have usually been political with religious undertones. But they made the Romans nervous because everywhere that a Messiah figure went, people got in a mood for revolution. Right. Yeah. So you don't want to be the guy that would provide the crowd with their lynching focus, which is exactly what Zacchaeus did. Right. He put himself directly in the path of harm, very easily could have made himself the scapegoat of that situation because he wanted to see Jesus. And so Jesus responds to him, come down, I'm going to eat with you today. We're going to share some time, some meal. It's just a similar image to me of I'm going to sit with you. I'm going to spend some time with you. I'm going to get to know you.
I think in our modern day understanding and cultural aspect, I know I did it until I watched The Chosen. I do not think I understood culturally how hated that tax collector was. Like, I don't know if we have a great example for our modern day culture of like somebody inside our culture that we all just hate, like unified hate.
Yeah. Unified hate.
Right.
Like, I'm not sure that we have a great example of someone that we could be like, okay, this is what it feels like. But for them, like you said, they were in cahoots with the Romans. And so he knew the ramifications of causing that type of attention to himself to a Messiah figure, what type of backlash that would have.
Yeah.
The societal category, I think the closest analog we have now, for of course, with Jews we think of capos. You know, those were they were a very important link for the Nazis to be able to control. It was a very important link between the ghetto and the concentration camp, was the capos that were the Nazi enforcers amongst the Jews. They were being paid. They were on the take. And so there's even a billionaire today that some say got his start that way in Austria. I don't know, God knows, but to this day, our society greatly distrusts that person. I don't know, but that category is probably where child molesters are, traitors, like open traitors.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only people we've got in a similar category, I think, in our society. And we're not as unified about that.
Unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I think, go ahead. I wasn't cutting you off.
No.
I agree.
That was it. Just understanding.
Right.
Like, that's what Zacchaeus was.
Yeah.
And Jesus was saying, come on down. I'm going to eat dinner at your house.
Yeah.
Like the ramifications of a follower, they see Jesus do a miracle. They're like, okay, I want to follow this man. But then they see him say, this is somebody who I am willing to not only speak to,
yes,
but also like eating dinner at somebody's home in that cultural context was something like, that was special.
Yeah.
You're sharing a meal. That means I'm an honored guest in your home. There's a level of like hospitality that's expected.
I feel like this is and I know we were going to go a different direction on here, but I
love this though.
This is actually related.
I think this example of Zacchaeus is such a great example of why the biblical feasts and the Sabbath and these things we've been talking about matter so much. Because if you think of how you learned about Zacchaeus growing up in church, you learned a song. He was a little man, so he climbed a tree so that he could see Jesus, and Jesus invited him to come to dinner with him. And that was so great.
Took a great step of faith, and we've just been roasting him ever since.
And I mean, there's a little bit there
Short
about how, like, you kind of got a nod to, well, he was a tax collector and Jesus still wanted to have, but the concept of the culture, the context.
We're thinking IRS guy that people might resent.
Yeah,
some people might
have
resent. Some people wouldn't. That's how we're thinking.
Even for us who grew up in the church, like, we were missing so much of what Jesus was doing in that story. And I think, like, it's just so important that we, as we grow, even as adults, and passing it on to the next generation, that how are we going to take them further in the Word of God and further into, and I think that's why we harp on it a lot, but I think that's really like the ministry of the chosen, is teaching people, because I think some of those things like the Sabbath, like the feast, have been put into such a religious framework where you do get access to them.
Yes.
It's like so religious, really.
Yes.
I feel like says it. And I think that when you just take them into the context of, like, Jesus, this was his life. So when he preached from the belief that everyone he was preaching to knew this context.
Yes.
Because that was his everyday life. And that was their everyday life. And that matters.
I mean, most of what he did was tell stories.
Yeah.
Culturally relevant stories that people with an ear for truth would,
Yeah.
you know.
Right.
And the truth is that for me, recovering the connection, which first was cultural, just going back to my roots as a kid, but recovering that connection to the feasts and all of that has been it's the stone that allowed them to decode the languages of the ancient world. Rosetta Stone.
Yeah,
it's been the Rosetta Stone that has unlocked.
Yeah.
We've talked about this a lot of times. It's first, it helped me recover the Hebrew context of our faith, which pulls you out of any religion and into the faith, and then go moving past that, deeper than that, into the cosmic context, because he put his calendar in the sky, in the stars. So that link is pretty quickly, you run into that link, and then there's at least one level beyond that, which is the way in which God has encoded the story of it all in our biology, in every aspect of creation. It's like the gospel, the law and the gospel, the revelation of God is like the infinity of Russian dolls. It never stops.
Yeah.
It just, each one unlocks the next one, the next one, which is why there can be a creature covered in eyes all around by the throne that spends all of eternity
being amazed,
repeating holy, 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 or Kodesh, 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 different, separate, set apart, not like anything else.
Yeah.
For eternity, just observing that uniqueness of God, which is why I believe Sunday was about.
Speaking of 2 Sundays ago.
True. Well, I didn't preach last week, so it doesn't count. Right. Phenomenal job, by the way.
Yes, so
appreciate it.
I've insulted tax agents, and which we have some.
Have Angela
I know.
Up in the South.
Oh, we have more than one. But I was just referring to we think of people's potential resentment of that. That's not the same thing as what Zacchaeus is about.
Obviously, yeah.
And then I've insulted our preacher.
Right.
But a couple Sundays ago, when really the Lord just moved in our altar, it was mostly just a lot of us just getting a very direct personal touch. But there has to come a point where we move beyond the need to believe in God.
Hold on. Wait. Pause. Just because when you said that.
Oh, it was, you could hear a pin drop.
And I'm happy that you addressed it. You were like, oh, it got tight in here.
Everybody went,
because you said something that controversial is the wrong word, but you said something that
not
was
a bad one.
Definitely like, if you weren't paying attention,
it was a big
now you have
mistake.
my attention. Like,
yeah.
Hold on, what did you just say? Because it was so counter of everything that I think that we're comfortable with,
Absolutely,
and that what we have like settled down and understood about God. But what you said was like revelatory in a lot of ways, because it was like, we can't stop with belief,
right?
Like, we preach like, believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, like
believe on
it. We're believers, right? But is that where we're supposed to stay?
He specifically said a lot of believers are going to be shocked to find out that I don't know them.
He did say that, though.
That's scary.
It is scary.
It is. And I believe that he is calling us. I don't believe in you in the same way that I believe in the vice president. Mm-hmm. I believe in her because I've seen a lot of evidence that she exists. Kamala Harris, as far as I'm concerned, is a real person with a reputation of all of that stuff shows me that she's real. I've seen the footprint of her life.
Right.
I don't have to believe in Pastor Brooke. I believe in you in the sense that I believe you can do it. But I'm saying I don't believe in you. I know you.
Right.
I don't need that. We've had this conversation before. We both have each other's passwords and like there is no, why'd you go in my phone and all. We've never had that. And that's, in my humble opinion, lunacy if you've got that boundary with your spouse. Most of the time, though, it shouldn't be needed. Functionally, sometimes we get in each other's stuff because we're trying to get something done, and there's no violation there. I don't know that either one of us has ever checked up on the other one, but regardless, the point is, we had this conversation a couple of times. I know you, so I know what somebody can make any accusation they want. I know what's in character and out of character. I know your character. I know your ways. I know your habits. I know your. So because of that, you're not going to shake me. I'm not going to get shook unless it's believable based off of what I know.
Right.
So that's what God is looking for with us, to know and be known. Paul said, I've determined to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ.
Nothing among you.
Yeah.
But Christ and him crucified.
So we've got to wrap this up. But that is why I believe I actually had in my notes that day, a couple of weeks ago, my notes were titled The Alchemy of Knowing, but I didn't have enough time to drop something quite that controversial out there. But the idea of that was just Job took one of the darkest things you've ever heard said when you consider the context of what all led to Job's speech in the first part of chapter 19. Very dark, very dark. And then he transmutes that into pure gold in the last few, like verse 25 through 27, 28, or whatever. Job 19. He just turns it into complete gold right at the end. And the secret ingredient is this: I know. I know that my Redeemer lives. I know he will stand on the earth. And then the most interesting expression, after my skin is destroyed, said the man with boils all over his body. This I know. Again, this I know, that in my flesh I shall see God. In other words, I'm not going to die without seeing God in my life. This from a man who just spent however long complaining about how everyone, including God, has abandoned him. Mm-hmm. I don't believe my friends are for me. I don't believe my wife is for me. I don't believe anybody is with me. But I do know this. I know who my Redeemer is. I know he will return. And I know I won't die without seeing him again. I know. It's much deeper. Israel knew his ways, Israel knew his acts, Moses knew his ways. That's from Psalms. So that's the point. When I know you, it's much harder for me to get shook because I know you. Good. I don't believe, I know. That's what we're being called to because we're going to need that.
That's right.
We're going to need that.
I love it how you put that challenge out to us. Move from belief to know.
So how do you do it? Fasting, praying, giving of alms, believe it or not, taking care of people, loving people, fasting, praying, making peace with everyone, getting rid of all bitterness, all division, all envy, all strife.
Studying the word.
That's right. Being in the fellowship of believers, reading and studying the word, singing, encouraging yourself in the Lord with psalms, spiritual hymns. Very simple.
Yeah.
You get to know him by spending time with him. You get to know him by dating him. Basically, you can't get around that.
Well, I mean, John 10 said, "My sheep know
my voice."
My voice.
In 101, that same Sunday you preached that, we were talking about faithfulness. If you know him, you'll be faithful to him. And the aspects we talked about were prayer, fasting, reading the word, and sharing the gospel.
By the way, what will cause me to lose my privileges of knowing her better than knowing Kamala Harris?
That's the only way that you can honestly have that level of trust and not feel like anything's being violated is by...
It's predicated on faithfulness.
Not only just faithfulness, but like take all the things that we're trying to like correlate to God as far as like praying, fasting, and reading and studying the word. Like I am devoting my time and affection vertically. The same way that we do that horizontally with relationships. The same way that we fast, we resist the urge to take part of every pleasure that is available to us. We push that aside because we're trying to draw closer to what really matters. Like the same concepts we do. I think that's the reason why he calls us the bride of Christ. He uses that level of marriage as articulating, painting the picture of how his relationship is with us, how we understand marriage.
Good.
We don't have time for it, but I would fully agree because in the ancient understanding of what that metaphor was about, it's about marrying the logical, the scientific, the evidentiary based with the gut, the intuitive, the part of you that could know someone, the part of you that isn't going to pick them apart, but is going to actually lean into what you feel off of them. The left and the right have to be united together, and the way that happens is when the ego is crucified between two thieves. That's why the pagans call that your third eye. They call spiritual vision your third eye, because the flesh has to die between two thieves. And ultimately, that's a little teaser, but that is an example of that deeper level on which even our biology reflects him and his story and his truth. The truth is that I have to die to me, to the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, for the brokenness of our mentality to be reunited in the wholeness of knowing.
Good.
That's so good.
It's good. So you guys jump into class, young adults tonight.
Let's
Pastor
go.
Jay. We'll see you on Good Friday.
Yes.
And we'll see you on Easter Sunday. Love y'all.
Love you guys. Bye.